Welcome to the Living After Faith podcast, here to help you recover from the damage of religion and move forward with your life, putting the emphasis on living after faith. This is the official podcast of recoveringfromreligion.org. Now with today's program on Living After Faith, here's Rich and Deanna Joy Lyons.
I'm Rich Lyons.
And I'm Deanna Joy Lyons.
Come laugh with me.
So today we are talking to the lovely and talented Al Stefanelli. He's a Georgia State Director for American Atheists and author of A Voice of Reason in an Unreasonable World, The Rise of Atheism on Planet Earth, and a prolific speaker and writer and journalist, both on atheist issues and others. You can find him blogging at Free Thought Blogs with some very wonderful rants. And he also co-hosts Reap So Radio, American Heathen Radio, and contributes to the No God blog on American Atheists, and writes a column for American Atheist magazine, Spotlight. But mainly the reason I wanted to have him on today was to talk about a column he wrote the other day on the blog about getting proselytized to in the grocery store by some crazy woman. Welcome to the show, Al.
Well, thank you for having me, and it is a joy to be here.
Let's start with your background. You had a previous life as a believer, is that right?
I had a previous life as a Southern Baptist pastor.
Oh, man.
Oh, my.
I was 20 years UPC, Pentecostal pastor.
My condolences. I started out in the Pentecostal church, as a matter of fact. I was a minister in the only Christian denomination to have its entire statement of faith in its name. It was the Pentecostal Free Will Baptist Church.
I didn't know that you could do that. Like, I always figured they were two different brands, like, you know, having a KFC Pizza Hut.
You would think so. Which is why I gravitated towards the Baptists, because I could never get that whole speaking in tongues thing down.
Oh, I'm pretty good. Here, follow me. Sell 'em a Honda.
Sell 'em a Honda. Bought a Toyota.
And then you put inflection. Sell 'em a Honda.
Sell 'em a Honda.
There you go. You got it.
Just put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable and you're set.
That's right.
If you're in Germany, you can throw in a Farfignugan or two.
Whoa.
There you go.
I had that once, but I got antibiotics and got better. But so you were a minister, and kind of bring us up to school on how you were in the religion and
How did you end up in it?
Well, I did not grow up or was not reared, as they say, as in a religious household. My parents were what you call non-practicing Catholics, which means they went to church on Christmas and Easter because the neighbors did, and then we came home and ate and drank. Other than that, that was pretty much my only infusion into the world of religion. My grandmother attempted to convince my parents to send me to what they used to call confraternity or catechism. That lasted a couple of months when I was, 11 or 12, and my parents were like, forget about it. But by and large, I had a secular upbringing, and up in New York and points north. I moved to the land of cotton, down to North Carolina back in 1991, in the end of 91. And I had never stepped foot into a Protestant church my entire life, ever. And a woman at work that I used to work with consistently, let's just say consistently, invited me to church. I acquiesced one day, mainly to shut her up, and I went. And the experience actually blew me away. It was a seeker service. It was a Pentecostal church. The band was phenomenal, unreal. And they had a choir too, which looked to be about 100 people. And I had never really, the only experience I had with choirs was what you find in the Catholic Church.
Totally different animal.
Completely different. And the emotion of the moment, I got caught up in it, and I ended up getting saved. And there's a funny anecdote behind that too, because when my wife and I got married, she was a disfellowship Jehovah's Witness, and I wasn't religious. So, we agreed, this is a second marriage for both of us. We each had one child from the previous one, and we had made a dual promise pact with one another that in our marriage we would not have religion or any new children.
How many kids you got?
I've got 4 children and 3 grandchildren. So, that didn't work out so well. And she had gone on a road trip for about 10 days. And while she was gone, I got saved.
Oh, boy.
Needless to say, she was not amused upon returning to our home in North Carolina. But we got through it, and I eventually sucked her into the land of religion. She is a believer, but she is not a fundamentalist. Anyway, to make a long story short, I ended up being a minister for this church, and then I planted a church and pastored a couple after that.
That's hard work, planting a church.
Yeah, it is. And the funny thing about North Carolina is that when you plant a church, obviously you incorporate, it's a 501c3, and in North Carolina, church corporations are perpetual. They have no expiration date, and they require no future filing of any paperwork whatsoever. So if you go onto the North Carolina Secretary of State website and type in my name, you will still see me as the founder and pastor of the Eternal Light Christian Fellowship Incorporated.
Awesome.
So I'm still a preacher in North Carolina. How do you like that?
Well, if you ever need a job in an emergency, you can always go back to preaching there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because no one knows who I am.
Of course not. No. They couldn't possibly Google your name or anything.
No. Wouldn't find anything out on Google.
What happened? How did you're preaching, you're starting churches, you're doing all the wonderful work of the good Lord. What happened?
Good Lord. Yeah, well, we had a special care ministry that was huge. My wife and I ran a food bank. We were hooked up with the sheriff's department to provide safe haven for abused women. It was just, we were really into it. Well, I was on the pulpit supply list for the Southern Baptist Convention, meaning I was filling in for vacationing pastors, and a buddy of mine who was on some board somewhere had suggested that if I wanted to get a larger church, a more mainstream, larger, not a mega church, but something with more than, 50 or 100 members, that I should expand my horizons and go back to school, to seminary, and complete my degree. And that is where the downfall came. I was in seminary at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary in Wake Forest, North Carolina, and one of the classes that we were required to take was called the History of Ideas, which was supposed to further indoctrinate the student to the wiles of the satanic thought processes of other religions and myths. Needless to say, one of the books that we had to have was called The Epic of Gilgamesh. And I began reading this book, and within 2 months, I was an atheist.
Wow. Too much education.
Yeah. Well, what it was is I was reading this, and it was written, The Epic of Gilgamesh was part of a textbook that was written by a scientist, an archaeologist, and someone who was very well versed in ancient history. And there was the story of I think his name was Upanishad. I can't recall his name, but he was the Gilgameshian equivalent of Noah.
Okay.
But it predated the Bible by thousands of years. And that was the bottom card on the house of cards that my faith was built on. Because if any part of the Bible wasn't true.
Yeah.
Well, then what other parts of the Bible wasn't true? So I had a crisis of faith, and within the 60 days from reading that story, I had investigated. I actually used my brain, got on. There really was no internet, so to speak, but I got a hold of every book that I possibly can from the local library that would try to explain what was in the Bible, and I found most of it to be untrue. And it was a very short order that I lost my faith. My last sermon that I ever delivered was on the prodigal son, reversed. And I walked out, never went back.
All of a sudden, your life just went upside down.
Well, it's funny because it really didn't in that aspect, because the churches that I was pastoring were very small. I was bivocational. So I wasn't really earning my living as a pastor. It wasn't my paycheck.
Right.
By trade, I'm a computer engineer.
Ah.
So making a living really wasn't the issue. Basically, the problems that I encountered were with the people that I was friends with, my colleagues, people that were in my circle of friends, relatives, and what have you. I didn't set out to be an activist. my deal really when I lost my faith was just to go on with life. I own my own business, to grow my business and to continue on with my life as I had the first 28 years that I was alive. It wasn't my plan to turn into an activist. The religious community kind of forced my hand in that. You just wanted them to leave you alone, and you had to keep explaining yourself over and over again, I'm guessing. I wanted them to leave me alone, which, in reality, that's really what most of us want. We want neutrality in government and just people to leave us alone. Most of us would rather not be subject to the animosity and the scorn and the ridicule and the bigotry and the hatred that comes with being an out-of-the-closet atheist. You'd have to be crazy to want to to subject yourself to that.
I want you to kind of talk about that for a minute, because it's so funny. People will say, oh, you just want to be an atheist so you can sin, or you just want to be an atheist because it's the easy way out. It's a cop-out. And I tell you, they're full of bullshit. I mean, no, it's not the easy way. It's the hardest damn thing I ever did in my life.
Oh yeah, I mean it's like the LGBT community gets the same thing,
right?
Because it's just such a wonderful part of life being an open member of that community. Yeah, it doesn't make sense when you examine it critically. No, well then again, there you got those two words. Critical examination isn't exactly a strong point of the religious community. Yeah.
So you're still married to a believer. How's that working out? And kind of bring us the inside picture of that.
Well, it works out fine. And the reason why it works out fine is because my wife and I, we concentrate and we continue to build our relationship. We're married over 20 years. We continue to build our relationship on common ground. I don't try to deconvert her, and she doesn't proselytize me. Now, she's not, in her defense, she's not a religionist. She's more, I would categorize her as just a person of faith. She believes in God, and she turns to her faith when things in her life don't go according to plan. But other than that, her and I share a lot in common. Give you an example. You remember years and years ago, there was a TV network or a cable network called Mystery Science Theater 3000 or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, where they had the old movies and they would talk over them and make jokes and funny voices.
They've evolved, I believe, into what is now known as the Sci-Fi Network. And they don't have the talking and the jokes, but they still show those cheesy B-movie science fiction movies that were made with a budget of about $16. Yep. And they're so bad they're good. And we love those movies just because they're horrible. So we'll sit down and on a Saturday afternoon and we'll spend the whole day watching cheesy science fiction movies, stepping out front, in between commercials to have a cigarette and to talk about, what's going to happen next. We live in a community where there's 100 miles of golf cart paths that snake through the community. We got a golf cart and we love going out, take the little ones, throw them on the back. And there's a lot of things that we do to preserve our relationship because it's not important to us to be on the same page spiritually. It's more important for us to coexist, to get along, to preserve our relationship, to understand every day what the things were about each other that initially attracted us to each other, because we weren't religious when we met.
Let me ask you this. Does the idea that you're going to hell weigh heavily on her, or is she a liberal enough Christian that she can look past that? I mean, does she go to sleep crying that, praying that you'll be saved by the time this is all over and done with?
No. My wife doesn't hold to a belief of a literal hell.
Excellent.
And like a lot of progressive Christians, heaven is a place where they believe that they'll go, but it's not a physical place with mansions and streets of gold. It's just, I guess in their eyes, it's being in the presence of God. But hell is a concept from the conversations we've had about it, is something of your own making, and it's in the here and now. You could be miserable for your entire life or you can choose to not be miserable for your entire life. And that has nothing to do with finances or anything. It's just your personal life's philosophy.
Yeah. I could see that.
So no, she doesn't. If I had to guess, I would just say that her beliefs as to what happens to me after I die are probably the same as what mine are. Just that I just cease to exist. I think in the Christian worldview, or in the progressive Christian worldview, that's called soul annihilation or something like that. You just cease to exist.
Oh, right.
You don't get to spend the rest of eternity with God, but you're not eternally punished for temporal
They take that, if you accept Jesus, you will have eternal life. They take that very much like to the letter, that you will, have the eternal afterlife. But if you don't have that, you just die. You just snuff out like a candle.
Snuffed out like a candle, and I don't even think that literally, at least with the people that view their faith along the lines of that my wife does, they don't have a cognitive or a physical interpretation of what heaven is.
Right.
A lot of the people I've spoken to that still maintain a very liberal theism are like, well, we really don't know what it is. The Bible, what the Bible describes heaven to be, is largely allegory, and the only thing that they feel they can be sure of is that it's going to be very good, whatever it is.
It's kind of like an orgasm. The worst I had was pretty damn good.
Exactly. There is no such thing as a bad blowjob.
Yeah.
Grace is not.
There you go.
So, but the thing is I can be in the presence of and have very, very rewarding relationships with people of faith. Some of my best friends, and I know that's so cliche, but some of my best friends are people of faith, people that my wife and I go out to dinner with. The wife is a believer, goes to church. The husband's somewhat of an agnostic, and we all go and eat Chinese food together. I mean, we don't choose to find the things that we differ on, to have an effect on our relationships. And I think that's what makes a successful transition from being a believer to being a non-believer, when you have to be in the presence of believers. You gravitate to those who really don't care if you're not a believer.
That is such a forward, progressive way of thinking. I mean, it makes total sense, but we have had so many emails, so many people have called us and said, I've lost my faith. I can no longer believe that stuff, and my wife is about to leave me.
Oh, don't get me wrong. Look, we went through a period, a really, really rough period, back about 7 or 8 years ago, where it almost ended our relationship. But it wasn't at the doing of either her or I. It was at the doing of the people that we were friends with, the people that we went to church with. Like I said, I would have been just, content to have been left alone.
Yeah.
It wasn't, it was okay, whatever. You go to church on Sunday and I'll sleep in or whatever, and I'll see you when you get back and we'll go grab a bite to eat at the Golden Corral.
Yeah.
It wasn't, there was nothing that was in my plan for becoming, an activist. What happened is, these people started an immediate and very focused attack on me and my marriage. I'll fill you in a little.
Okay.
Okay. I'm disabled. All right. I draw disability. I've got Parkinson's disease and several other autoimmune issues that affect my mobility. If you are aware of the impact that a disability has when you're a member of the religious community and then you leave the religious community, you could almost expect the reaction. God is punishing you. God is trying to get your attention. He wants you to come back in the fold. He can heal you, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
That was the first volley of salvos that came in. then they got really personal. You know, say what you want about me. You know, I don't care. I've got a very thick skin. Shit rolls off me. I get hate mail if you can't believe. The entire last chapter of my book is hate mail, and I didn't change the grammar or punctuation. It's actually kind of like
I can't wait to read it.
But you know, they came at me, you know, pretty hard on that, and I was like, well, you know, that's kind of a crappy thing to do. You know, what happened to me being God's special snowflake? You know, once I lost my faith, now, you know, I was the victim of cheap shots. But you know what? It didn't work. But that was strike one. Mm-hmm. And when they realized that attacking me wasn't going to work, what happened next was deplorable. The local pastors, the ministers, some of the church leaders decided they were going to turn their attention to my wife. And what they would try to do was plant seeds of doubt and resentment. You know, in an effort to turn her against me.
That's such a loving thing to do.
So Christian.
Oh, yeah. Now, you know, of course she was already vulnerable at the time because I did lose my faith. And that was a pretty, you know, major part of our life. They took advantage of that. Some of the local Christian women that she'd known for years, would, you know, sequester her in a corner and tell her that if it were them, that they would divorce me and take the kids. Some of them even offered help, you know, to help her out. You need some money, a place to stay. They cited biblical justifications about me no longer being trustworthy as a husband. And needless to say, you know, it did get dicey, and it almost worked. You know, it almost worked, but it didn't work. It didn't work because of the bond that my wife and I had made when we got married as non-religious people, and having been a non-religious couple for a while before I delved into it, we had a pretty strong base. So that was strike two. When they realized that my wife had absolutely no intention of leaving me, then they turned their attention to my kids. Now, my kids are grown, except for my son. The three oldest ones are grown, gone. Like I said, I got grandkids now. But back then, they were young. And the pastors and the Sunday school teachers would, you know, get them aside and tell them that I couldn't possibly be a good father if I wasn't a Christian. I wouldn't be able to guide them. I was incapable of loving or caring for them,
hell no.
You know, without divine guidance. And they let me know that there was a special place in hell for people who cause others to stumble, particularly children. Now, this didn't work either because my son came back to me and told me what happened, and I said, I need to go talk to them. And he says, well, you don't really need to bother. I basically told him to fuck off, as well as an 8-year-old
Good
kid.
for him.
That was strike three. At that point, after they attacked me and my disabilities, after they tried to get my wife to leave me, and after they tried to get my kids to well, they couldn't leave, but after trying to turn them against me, this is over about a 6-month period. I had it. I said, all right, you know, fine, no problem. I'm a wop from Brooklyn. You know, you want to ride this train? Okay. They ended up getting physical. My car windows were broken, tires were slashed. They ripped my little flying spaghetti monster emblem off the back of my Buick. That really pissed me off.
Damn. Anybody who'd touch a Buick, man, that was my preacher mobile, the Buick. Gee.
You know, yeah, I had, so was mine.
Man.
That was it, my blue Buick. It was a very respectable and divinely designed, intelligently designed vehicle. But the death threats were coming in. Property was being damaged, windows broken, whatever. So those incidences, along with the group shunning, they're really good at group shunning by the people that my wife and kids had considered not just friends, but their support system. Right. It just made living in the area unbearable, unsafe, and you take that into account with the epic discrimination we were getting. We were run out of town. I moved my family basically 600 miles away from where we were. Yeah, and I was excited about it until I realized, the ramifications of uprooting my two youngest kids from everything they'd ever known. My wife's entire family lived in or around that town.
On the subject of moving, we talk about this occasionally, but I was, once I had finally moved, I left Texas, moved to Seattle, and that's when my life started to come back together again. But I was a participant in a bulletin board at that time for former Pentecostals. And one of the things that they had said is a large percentage of Pentecostal pastors who leave kill themselves within the first 3 years. After that, it goes pretty much to ambient. But the percentage of people who kill themselves. But of the ones who survived, 80% of them moved more than 500 miles away from the city that they were in when they left.
Well, I didn't have suicidal thoughts. My problem was I had homicidal thoughts.
I'll bet.
I actually considered, I was trying to come up with ways, how, where can I get a plane and a bomb? Mm-hmm. It got to that point that, it was a very unhealthy, it was very unhealthy for me to have all this hate and animosity in me. Because really, I don't hate anybody. I'm not about some of the things people are trying to do, but as far as human beings go, there's a reason why people believe the way they do. And while I don't hold people, while I do not absolve individuals from the responsibility of their actions, I understand why people are the way they are. I'm a student of psychology. But the thing about it is that when we moved, it was a pretty big deal for them, because in the community that I lived in addition to pastoring these bivocational churches, I was also heavily involved in a mega church. I wrote Bible studies, and I was also a columnist for the city's newspaper. I had a weekly column that was very, very fundamentally religious based, kind of like that guy Cal somebody, or I can't remember his name. He's a conservative fundamentalist syndicated newspaper columnist. I can't remember his name, Cal something or another. Cal Edwards.
I can't remember. We weren't allowed to. My group was so fundamentalist, we weren't allowed to do things like read newspapers and.
Yeah, well, you guys would have loved this guy. So anyway, I wrote that, and I also had a syndicated radio program that covered 7 or 8 counties in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. So when they ran me out of town, the people that I did speak to, I mean, for months following that, I was the subject of victory sermons.
Oh yeah.
We ran the Satanist out of town, and all this other stuff. But like I said, once I moved away, I'd say about 2 or 3 years after I left is when I started feeling confident enough to where I could actually start doing things outside of having a little forum. I had a little forum on a network that you had to pay to be a member to. It was very closed. Mm-hmm. Nobody really knew who. I was living in rural Alabama, which is right out of the frying pan into the fryer files. I moved from North Carolina to Alabama, but after a while, I became very comfortable in my own skin, and I was like, well, you know what? I'm kind of enjoying doing this. I'm kind of enjoying speaking out. I'm kind of enjoying being able to try to, affect some change and to speak out for those who don't have the ability to speak out on their own. I formed a civil rights group company back about 2005, 2006 called the United Atheist Front.
Great name.
Yeah, it actually started out as a joke because I was making fun of all the ridiculous names of these fundamental religious organizations. Right. No matter what it was, they always had the word front in it. So I figured, okay, United Front. Well, it stuck. And although I've put the corporation into dormancy when I took on the role of Georgia State Director for American Atheists, the United Atheist Front Facebook page has got about 8,000 very active members. So they're kind of carrying the UAF torch for me. I don't really do too much on that side. I got like 7 or 8 admins that keep it going for me. But it just goes to show you, when you form a group or a coalition or a forum or even a social networking community of like-minded people who refuse to keep their head in the sand on what the fundamental religious community is foisting upon reasoned people of the world, you generally end up with a successful community. There's a lot of conversation going on. One of my favorite quotes, and I don't know who did it. I put it in my book. I may have made it up. Who the hell knows? But it's very simple. It goes, ignorance does not reflect well on the reason.
Nice.
I like that.
Well, and there are atheists. There are people who come on to my Facebook site and my personal Facebook page, Google Plus, whatever, the social networking, and why do you got to be so confrontational? Why do you got to be so contrarian? Why do you got to be so strident? How come you keep posting all these stories of pedophile priests and honor killing Islams, and why do you keep putting this stuff out there? Because we need to know that it's out there.
Absolutely.
Podcasts like this one. And Reapso Radio and American Heathen Radio and blogging networks like Free Thought Blogs or any of them, that keep in the public eye all of the batshittery that is going on at the behest of the religious community serve a purpose. And that purpose is the same purpose that, founded the Fourth Estate, the news media. People have a right to know, and people have a need to know about the abrogations to human rights and to human civil rights that the fundamental religionists are trying to foist upon us.
Exactly.
There are people who are completely clueless about how hard the fundamentalists are trying to put intelligent design and creationism back in the classrooms. They're completely ignorant as to what's going on in countries that are outside of our borders. What's going on in the Middle East, what's going on in Britain, what's going on in New Zealand and Australia and China and the Philippines and Soviet Union and Ireland. They just don't know. And they prefer going through their lives not knowing.
And, it's interesting that you point that out because we're all aware of the issues in the Middle East. We're probably going to nuke Iran before too long, or at least be in a, shooting war with them. And this shit just keeps coming back up. I mean, when I was in high school, Ronald Reagan had just won, the presidential election. It's inauguration day. Iran let our hostages go, and that meant we didn't have to go and bomb their asses back then. I mean, this is 30 years, longer than 32 years later. And now we're looking at doing the same shit over again, and it's all about religion. People say it's about the oil. I don't think we give a shit about the oil.
Well, no, you're right. It has been, and it started back in the 70s with Paul Weyerowitz and the association, ALEC is the abbreviation for it, the precursor to the moral majority, the advent of the religious right. You've got people that have systematically been infiltrating Republican politics since the late 70s. And the people who have successfully turned the GOP into God's own party are still in the news today. People like Tim LaHaye and his wife, and people like Pat Robertson, the late and not so great Jerry Falwell, Billy Graham. These are names that people know, but they don't know. And I've blogged about this, and actually a good portion of my book is devoted to the rise of atheism in American politics. And I take it back 35 years to their first victory, getting Reagan in the White House. But people, they're ignorant, and I wouldn't say they're willfully ignorant. They're just ignorant. I mean, there are things I'm ignorant about. I know that when I get in my car and I turn the key and I take the little lever and I move it until that little red arrow goes on the D and I press down the accelerator, my car is going to go forward. But I am completely ignorant on how a transmission works.
Absolutely.
So ignorance isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just lack of knowledge. What really gets me is when you try to educate people and you present them with facts and historical documents about the involvement of the religious right in our politics and in our economy. Then, in the face of facts, they still refuse to believe it. And that's when you gravitate from ignorance, which is perfectly fine, to willful ignorance, which I have a huge problem with.
My definition, willful ignorance, I appreciate that. Back when I was a preacher, I preached that I use that as my definition for stupid. Willful ignorance. If you just want to be stupid, I can't help you.
Well, you're nicer than I am on that. My favorite description for willful ignorance is just you're a fucking idiot. and that's I've said that, I've typed that, I've wrote that, I've spoke that, I've even sung it a time or two, which is scary in itself. But the point is that whatever you call it, it's imbecilic is what it is. It's the equivalent of looking up at the sky and saying it's green when it's clearly blue because someone who says, well, God says it's green, so therefore it's green.
Getting back to ignorance versus willful ignorance, I have a lot of friends here in Seattle who give me a lot of shit for talking about atheism, for, like you said, posting articles about the boy raping priests.
Or homeopathy. You want to see him get on her ass. Post something against homeopathy.
Oh, dear goodness. But so a lot of the people here in Seattle, this is one of the most unchurched places in the U.S., and even among those who are religious, they kind of just don't talk about it because I think they realize that there aren't a lot of other evangelicals or fundamentalists here. And, you never know what somebody's opinion is until you tell them that you're an atheist. And then whether they're actually a non-believer too, technically an atheist, they don't want to, identify as an atheist, or if they're religious, they come out of the woodwork when you say I'm an atheist or when you express yourself. And they go, well, nobody's really trying to replace evolution in schools, and nobody's really being bigoted against anybody because of religion. That's, you're just imagining things. You're being hysterical. And I go, what the fuck, dude? I could give you pages and pages of ways where, especially in politics, where religion is literally changing the face of this country. And these people don't realize it because they're not, for instance, in Alabama, in the thick of it, or, somewhere where a majority of people don't believe in evolution. I had a friend tell me, I said, you wouldn't believe this, dude, but 60% of the country right now does not think that evolution is true. And they were like, what? No.
And I've been living in the South for 25 years. And when I run into people like that, that's my reaction. What are you an idiot? Really? You really seriously? Those two words I use in conjunction a lot, really and seriously, because sometimes I can just look at someone and go, really? Seriously?
Yep.
Just for what comes out of their mouth is just, and I'll tell you, going back briefly to the whole homeopathy thing, I used to use homeopathy as a way to cull my Facebook page. My Facebook account has been maxed out for a very long time. Mark Zuckerberg feels that I'm only allowed to have 5,000
That is
friends.
so not fair.
And I hit that a long time ago. So I've got a queue of about 600 people that are waiting to get in. And I used to post something whenever I wanted to, because it's a pain in the ass having to go through each individual friend, look at their profile to see if they're, trolls or whatnot. It's just time consuming. So I just don't have that kind of time. I have a finite amount of energy due to my disabilities, and when it's gone, it's gone. So I don't have a whole lot of extra time to waste. So what I would do is I would post something negative about homeopathy, and I'd lose 2 or 3 or 4 friends. Sometimes they'd say, oh, I'm defriending you. How could you say that? But all of a sudden I'd log on one day and I'd be down to 49.96, and then I could add some people in. I found an even more effective way of getting unwanted people off your Facebook page.
How's that?
Post something negative about Ron Paul.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man, I love that. That is so funny.
I posted something. And sometimes, I have a bunch of people from American Heathen Radio had said, man, I can't get on your page. There's about a dozen of them. I was like, well, I'll have to find a way to, to make room for you. So I posted some little blurb about Ron Paul, and of course the shitstorm started, and I lost 2 or 3 people. Then I found the Holy Grail.
Ooh.
I found a video of Ron Paul speaking in favor of the southern side of the Civil War, giving this speech standing in front of a huge Confederate flag.
Oh, I've seen that video. Yep. Okay.
Oh, it was great. I go, oh, man, this is going to be wonderful. So I put it up there, and man, I lost like 15 people, and I was able to add, people right away. But that's the mindset, though. And that goes back to what you were saying, Deanna. That's the mindset. When you say something or post something or make your opinion known about anything that goes against the belief in God, or that goes against some ideology that believers associate with either religion or what's supposed to be the zenith of atheism.
Right.
Like Ron Paul.
Yeah.
He's got a really big atheist base. There are a couple of things that I agree with. As someone who's got 4 autoimmune diseases, I'm really in favor of the legalization of marijuana.
I was going to say, that's the only thing that I'm with him on. You need to move to Seattle. Up here, we have, number one, medical marijuana is legal. Number two, by voted in ordinance, the lowest priority of police officers in Seattle is enforcing individual use laws. So they have to stop jaywalkers before they can bust someone for smoking a joint.
Well, you see, I've told friends of mine that live in the Seattle area, as well as everyone I know in Canada, if you can take your state and or your country and just kind of trade places with Baja or Mexico,
right?
Because cold weather plays havoc on my nervous system. I'm literally, if it goes down below 50, I'm in long underwear, thermal underwear, and sweatshirts and wool socks, and everyone's out walking in their t-shirts, and I'm going to the store with a winter coat on.
I don't know. I'm kind of with you. Of course, I thought my reason's not a disability. I'm just a pussy from Texas.
Well, I grew up in New York City, so you would think that I would be used to it, but I have no tolerance for that. But when you say something that's contrary to someone who has very strong ideals, especially if it's got anything to do with religion, you're going to get monkeys flying out of assholes everywhere. Religious people cannot understand what it's like not to believe in God. Right. It is such an integral part of their being.
Exactly.
That this is why they consistently say atheism is a religion. Or they say, why are you pushing your beliefs on me? I'm not pushing my beliefs. I don't have beliefs. I have things that I reason to be true or false, and I base that on a method of investigation that I guess is used by reasoned people, scientists, what have you. But my belief, to me, and as a matter of fact, I've gotten to the point that when I write now, whenever I type the word belief, I backspace and I replace it with the word reason. Because my beliefs are based on a set of circumstances that has happened to me in the past to lead me to reason that a certain event will happen. I know that last night my wife went out with her girlfriend to go to the movies, okay? And I said to myself, I believe she'll be home around 9 o'clock. I don't believe she'll be home around 9 o'clock because some, invisible sky daddy is going to pluck her from the center aisle of the movie theater and deposit her in my living room. I believe she's going to be home around, because A, she knows how to drive a car and she remembers where she lives.
Yep.
and every day when she goes out, she returns home.
So the odds are pretty good you're going to be right just based on reason and no sky daddies involved.
And I don't say, well, I know she'll be home because, something may happen. Maybe she might get into, to an accident, or she might run into another friend of hers and decide to go to Starbucks for a couple hours and just chit chat. I could say there's a high likelihood that she'll eventually be home, if she doesn't get killed somewhere on the way. But when I use the word belief, I don't use it in the same context as a believer does, but the believer does not have the cognitive ability or the cognitive, well, maybe not ability. They have the ability. They just lack the desire to, I guess, or the fortitude to use that word in anything outside of the supernatural or the spiritual. They don't understand that, for me and for, I'm guessing you guys, how the whole idea that a God can even exist would go against every fiber of our being. I can no longer unlearn the things that I've learned about science. I can't wrap my head around how it could be good for anyone to believe in an imaginary being that insists on enslaving the mind, that convicts people of thought crimes, as our wonderful and much missed Christopher Hitchens used to say. Religious belief to me is a rape of our senses.
Absolutely.
They try to regulate who we sleep with, what kind of foods we eat, what we drink, what we smoke, what we watch on TV, what we look at on our computers, what we go to see in the movies. And I find myself now, 10 years later, unwilling to apologize for the way that I interact with religious people, especially when you consider all the arguments, the hate, strife, war, murder, crime, discrimination, bigotry that revolve around the belief in a deity. And I find it rather shocking that when we consider the huge stores that are the collection of human knowledge in sciences, that we're still arguing and debating on a serious level that God even exists.
Yeah, it is definitely flabbergasting, I guess. If
it blows my mind, how someone can try to put on equal footing creationism with evolution. That's why I don't debate creationists. I don't debate. I have been called so many times. Hey, you want to debate this person? He's a theologian. He's got a PhD and yada, yada, yada. And he wrote 3 books on intelligence. No, not interested.
Yep.
I'm not interested because I don't feel it necessary to argue whether or not the Nintendo Wii came from Walmart or it was dropped down the chimney by Santa Claus.
Right. Yep.
Exactly.
It's not even an argument. It's religion is people. Well, religion is good. It's good for no, it's not. It's not. I mean, outside of the completely. I can't even think of the word, and I'm a writer. The concept of hell. It's a psychological black hole that people just can never escape from. Religion is not good. It makes you a slave to contradictions, and it forces you to accept inaccuracies, inconsistencies, horrible science, poor mathematics, completely erroneous geography, immoral comments, false prophecies, degenerate heroes, human sacrifice. There are so many problems inherent with religion. It makes it the biggest Ponzi scheme in the history of the... Christ, man, it makes Bernie Madoff look like a 5-year-old who stole a cookie from the freaking pantry. I can never go back to believing. It's impossible.
I had a friend, a guy I was in high school with, best friends in high school, in fact, recently tried to, he's still a preacher, tried to convert me back to believing in God and gods and all that kind of weird stuff. And I told him, I said, your chances would be better of trying to convince me that the Easter Bunny or the Tooth Fairy is real.
Yeah.
Because I have way less animosity and way less evidence against the Tooth Fairy and against the Easter Bunny than I do against God.
Those fuckers bring me treats.
That's
I mean,
right.
Seriously, that's way more than God ever did.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the existence of the divine, then you take a bite of some Godiva chocolate.
Oh, dude.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Thing is, they're fairy tales, man. And they're not only fairy tales, but they're fairy tales that are started where the indoctrination starts around the same age as when Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny or the Tooth Fairy come, except at a certain age, you abandon those.
Right.
I would argue that it's actually immoral for people to, teach their children that Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny exist. But on the other hand, it's also teaches them that sometimes people lie to you about really important things and invisible beings. So they learn to kind of give it up. So I'm torn on the two, but
from my point of view, I mean, this is just my personal opinion. As long as it is explained to a child what it is, you want to develop a healthy ability for a child to explore their imagination, but you also at the same point want to keep them grounded in what is true. That's the problem I have with compulsory Sunday schools, and I call them compulsory Sunday schools is because I don't know of a child that would willingly rather go to Sunday school on a Sunday morning outside of watching cartoons or playing with their kids. The only thing that Sunday schools do is add more narrow-minded, ignorant, bigoted, discriminatory, and hateful people to the world. And these people who believe in these fairy tales, they need to be dragged, kicking and screaming, into the postmodern world for their own good and for the good of humanity. Like homeopathy?
Yeah.
There exists no problem within the scope of human existence that can be solved through theology. You can quote me on that.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah.
Now, Deanna was telling me earlier about an article she read about, and actually read it out loud to me, shared it with me, about your encounter at a grocery store. Now,
I read that rant and I was like, we have got to talk to this guy.
I get that. I get that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm an easy target. I'm usually in a wheelchair or one of them little cripple scooters, that they have at the grocery store.
Yeah.
And apparently, people feel the need to come up to me and talk to me about, their deity du jour. Do you know Jesus? I was with my wife one day and she was like, oh, that was so mean, but she laughed. A lady come up to me in Walmart, says, do you know Jesus? And I said, I do. She goes, well, when did you find him? I said, I haven't been able to, and my grass is getting really tall. And I can say that because I have Latino blood in me. But my wife was like, that, why? I wasn't in the mood.
Yep.
I wasn't in the mood to be approached by, someone trying to, because I knew where it was going. I always know where it's going.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I'm congenial. Someone who's very elderly, I'm not going to bless them out, as they say. But, when I get these people that walk up to me with T-shirts that say turn or burn, sorry, man, gloves are off.
Oh, yeah.
Gloves are off. And I get it a lot. They'll approach me and ask me if I'm a friend of Jesus, or do I know that Jesus. I had one woman actually in a Target come up to me and lay hands on me and start speaking in tongues. I was like, what the fuck?
Oh my God.
I didn't even see her. She come up behind me. Next thing I know, I thought it was my wife. I feel hands on me and I'm going to, buy a Honda, whatever. I'm like, I turn around and I go, what are you doing? I'm putting the healing of God on you. So I'm going to put the healing of God on you if you take your fucking hands off me. And she's like, oh my word.
Well, you're perfectly justifiable
Yeah.
or justified in being rude to somebody who is being rude to you first. I'm a big believer in telling somebody to fuck off when they are messing with you in a way like that.
I was going to say that woman should be charged with assault.
That's a good idea.
I told one guy, I said, do you have any idea how painful it is to be run over by a 350-pound wheelchair with a 220-pound man in it?
Let's see if Jesus will heal you from that.
My wheelchair weighs 300 pounds.
Wow.
And I weigh, well, it's a power chair.
Nice.
And my, I weigh about 220.
Right on.
Or better yet, I've had a couple of guys come up to me with signs or T-shirts, turn or burn or whatever, and they'll come up to me and they'll say, and they find out I'm an atheist, and they get all, and the problem is they think I'm confined to the wheelchair. So they'll get, I'm not. I can walk, I'll walk like shit, and I can't walk without a cane or a crutch, but I can go short distances. And they'll come up to me and they'll be like, what do you mean you're an atheist? You know that you're going to burn in hell? And then I stand up. And I'm almost 6'3".
Right on.
And I'm a fairly large and imposing looking guy, and I'll just get up, and 9 times out of 10, I could almost guess that I'm going to be taller than whoever's trying to berate me with their baffling batshittery of Bible bullshit. And I'll stand up and they'll be like, excuse me, where did you say I was going to end up? Take this tract. Give us a call if you want to talk. And then they just scamper away like running their little roach errands.
Well, once they see that you're not a vulnerable person anymore, that they can't just go willy-nilly just giving you shit, they're running scared from that. It just amazes me.
And here's a surprising thing, because every now and then you get a nugget. Mm-hmm. You get a gold nugget that makes you smile, I was in Walmart, and I was in a little cripple scooter looking for something. And this older woman comes walking up to me, and she says, I used to be in a wheelchair too. And the first thing I thought of was, here it comes. Jesus healed me. Mm-hmm. But she said, but you know what though? Those wonderful doctors at and she mentioned some teaching hospital in California. These wonderful doctors, and the marvels of modern medicine, and surgery and physical therapy got me out of that. And she goes, I really hope that you're pursuing that. And I said, well, actually, what I have is incurable, but I do try to keep up on the latest. And this ended up in a conversation about science and about, medicine and about research. And here's a woman who looked like she was a doting Sunday school teacher. And she says, don't tell anybody, but I'm a member of, and she gave me some name of some free thought society.
Oh, sweet.
To which I took my little business card holder. I says, well, I'm the Georgia State Director of American Atheists. And I handed her a card. The woman gave me a hug.
Aww.
And I was like, man, you're going to make me cry in the middle of freaking Walmart. But those are nuggets. Every now and then I have a t-shirt that from a distance, it looks like a Jesus fish. Mm-hmm. But when you get close, it's Darwin. It's the Darwin fish.
Love that.
I had people walk up to me, hey, cool shirt, man. So, it's not all bad. It's not all, you being, people are foisting their ideologies on you. There are those times of the day or times of the week where, reality lets you know that, you're not wasting your time.
Yep, we get emails occasionally from people who, they thought they were the only non-believer out there. They thought that, they were pretty much going to be surrounded by people who were just going to give them crap all the time. And, we encourage people to, not only join communities either online or locally, but we encourage them to, kind of be honest about what they believe if they're in a position to do so. And it's so amazing. That makes it all worthwhile. Like, you can get crap from like 20 different believers in a row who want to tell you to shut up. And, just one person says, hey, thanks a lot for being there. That, sure. Get all teary and stuff.
Yeah. And the thing about it is that when you do run into these people, it kind of gives you, motivation to continue.
Yep.
Because if it was all bad all the time, I could almost understand. I've made a lot of enemies in the atheist community, not that I want to. I would have that we all get along. Mm-hmm. But there are people who have chastised me, rather severely for being as outspoken as I am. They're accommodationists. Mm-hmm. We need to respect other people's beliefs, and you shouldn't be saying the things that you are. You shouldn't be so strident, and you shouldn't do this, and you shouldn't do that. And I'm like, well, you know what? First of all, let me make this clear. I don't find the need to be nice to anyone who follows a God who thinks I should be dead. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing. The second thing is that there is room in our movement for all types of programs.
Yep.
Okay.
Right.
And I liken it. I'm a former United States Marine, so I liken things to the military theater. Mm-hmm. All right. You can't successfully engage in combat or successfully win a battle if all you have is the Marines on the front line. You have to have support troops. You have to have technicians, mechanics, mobile army hospitals. You have to have the USO coming in and entertaining the troops. You have to have cooks. There are so many different cogs that go into the machine of a successful military engagement. There are people who, like you said, think they're the only ones in their community who are atheists.
Yep.
Someone like me is not going to appeal to them. But the person who has the little free thought group that functions as a social club where all they do is get together and have coffee and eat lunch, we need those groups.
Yeah. They
replace the missing part of the life of the churchgoer who was used to the Wednesday night fellowships and, all the social activities that the church provides in the community. We need those. But we also need people on the front lines calling out the bullshit. Yeah. We also need people to write letters, to file lawsuits, to carry signs in protests and counter-protests. We also need to align ourselves with other groups that are being discriminated against. African American people. Yeah, racism is dead. Bullshit. Go to Southeast Atlanta.
Go to Marshall, Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah, or the LGBT community.
Yep.
I've been a member of various LGBT civil rights groups for years and years and years, to where people generally accuse me of being, a closeted homosexual. I'm like, you know what? Even if I was, what the fuck business is it of yours?
Right. Exactly.
But the thing is that, we have to, as a community, because you can't herd cats, as it were, we have to find it within ourselves to understand two things. Every form of activism has value.
Yes.
That's number one. Number two, if you remove any one of those forms of activism, you damage the entire movement.
Yep.
And I catch a tremendous amount of shit for that. But you know what? It doesn't faze me. I can't let it faze me.
Let's talk about, you've got a blog. Let's talk about your book. Let's let people know how they can follow up with you.
Before we do that, can we do a real quick bit about American Atheist National Convention and Reason Rally? I'm guessing you're going to be there.
Oh, yeah. That is probably the busiest week of the year for me. I will be at the Reason Rally. And right now, as we speak, the powers that be at the Free Thought Blog Network are trying to work something out where we can do a meet and greet. Obviously, it has to be a large venue, mostly because we've got, PZ Myers and Greta Christina and Jenny McCrate, the Blag Hag, and there's some really high-profile people that are part of this network. So we're trying to work that out, and details will be forthcoming. But I will be at the Reason Rally. The convention, which follows the 2 days following, and this might be of interest to you guys if you're going to be there on Sunday. I think it's at 1 or 1:15. Myself, Brother Richard.
Yay, Brother Richard Haynes. Ernest
Pierce and a couple of other guys are going to be paneling a discussion called I think it's Meet the Preachers. We're all former pastors.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Excellent.
And we're going to be up on stage on a panel taking questions from people about what it was like to transition from the ministry to atheism and a lot about what we talked about today. So I'll be doing that.
We'll definitely be there. We've got our tickets already. We'll be at both the Reason Rally and the American Atheist Convention, and
it is going to be a blast. I got some speaking engagements afterward up in Pennsylvania. I don't know if anyone is listening is going to be up there, but I'll be in pretty sure Philadelphia, Harrisburg, probably Lancaster, and it looks like Scranton. And then I've got to make my way all the way over to Fayetteville, North Carolina, because I'm one of the speakers at Rock Beyond Belief.
Oh, wonderful.
And then I get to go home and pass out for several days.
I believe it.
You're a blogger. You've got a book out. Tell us about your book, where we can get it, what we can expect to read in it.
The book is available on Amazon. If you want the paperback, you can get it from Amazon.com. You can just go in there and type in my name, Al Stefanelli, or A Voice of Reason. You'll come up with it. Or you can go to my website. Everything that I do is on my website. It's just alstefanelli.com. Keep it simple.
We'll put a link.
Yeah, it's and from there you can reach just about everything else that I do. There's links all over that, speaking schedules, et cetera, et cetera. But the book is, when I had been looking at terrorism, I was in seminary when the World Trade Center was attacked. And obviously, like many people, I had, why is this happening? Is this the end of the world? Of course, immediately as a religious person, eschatology came into my mind. End times, Revelation and all that. Once I got out of that, which was very shortly afterwards, because as I told you earlier, I lost my faith while in seminary, I started looking at terrorism, and it kind of fascinated me in a morbid way, because I was looking at how not body counts, but instances of terrorist acts seem to be increasing. From about 1985, 87, maybe 1990, around there, exponentially. 1 year there were 12 acts of terrorism, and then there was 22 acts, and there was 60, then there was 100. And like I said, you can't use body counts because 9/11 blew them all away. But if you look at actual acts of terrorism, they've been increasing. When I got into activism, it was also intriguing to me that over the past, couple of decades, that atheism, the new atheist movement, had been increasing. And I don't know what actually caused me to make this comparison, but one day I was looking at some figures, and it appeared to me that the rise of atheism was rising parallel to the rise of terrorism. And I couldn't for the life of me figure out there had to be a connection there. It was just too much of a coincidence, for the amount of atheist books that were coming out, just from a purely statistical point of view. It looked like the popularity of atheism, the number of people that were putting non-religious or atheist on the census, just things like that, were rising at about the same rate that terrorism was. And I'm thinking to myself, there's got to be a correlation. And I found it. And I'm not, a super genius. And I was surprised that nobody else had picked up on this. Well, since the book came out, a lot of people, have looked into it and have validated it. But it was an angle that I was alone. There was nowhere for me to go read about this. And I had to do a tremendous amount of research on this. But the book explains how the religious right taking over American politics, its effect on foreign policy, and the reaction of Islamic nations to American exceptionalism.
Interesting. I believe it.
Yeah, and I'd go into a little further, but then no one's going to want to buy the book. So, if you want to find out more about that, you could also get it digitally. It's available in every conceivable digital format, and there's a link on my website to a company called Smashwords, which you can buy it's $3.99, I think I've got it, or maybe $2.99 for the digital version.
Fantastic deal.
Yeah, you can get it in Kindle, Nook, Palm, iPod, iPhone, iPad, whatever iThing you have. You can get it there, and that's the first part of the book. The book is split up into 3 parts. That's the first part. Covers that. There's a first chapter is on how we actually got here. It's got a lot to do with the development of human languages and whatnot, and it's got a lot of really cool Richard Dawkins-esque facts about evolution in it, and how that pertains to the development of religious belief and whatnot. It all ties in. The second part is basically a treatise on morality and ethics, and how you can be moral, good without God, as it were. And the third part is called Mashed Potatoes. And I had taken a poll over the course of writing the book. I said, okay, I got room for about 15 articles out of about 1,000 that I've written over the years. And I picked the 15 most popular ones and threw them in there.
Excellent. It sounds like fun. I enjoy your writing a lot on the blog, especially.
Thank you.
So I'll be buying at least a couple of digital copies. We have this war in our household. Rich is a Nook man, and
I'm a Nook.
And I'm a Kindle girl. So, yeah.
I want both.
Yeah.
See, that makes me what? Let's see. What's a good word you can attach to that?
Bi-publical.
Biliteral.
Biliteral. I like
biliteral.
Excellent.
Biliteral. I'm one of those biliterals. I want both.
Thank you so much for coming on our show today. We'll put links up in the show notes for everything you need to know about our guest, Al Stefanelli, and probably a link to the Reason Rally and American Atheist Convention as well. I'm Deanna Joy Lyons.
I'm Rich Lyons.
Come laugh with me.
You've been listening to the Living After Faith podcast, the official podcast of recoveringfromreligion.org. The music in this episode is Rosecross by Morrison's Prophecy. You can follow on Twitter at LAF with me, like Living After Faith on Facebook, or go to livingafterfaith.com. Thank you for listening to Living After Faith.